Hello. Today we are live with Anfernee Chansamooth from the Founders Connect podcast. We're going to chat about he and his lovely partner in crime, Sydney. Oh my God, can't even get the words right at the moment. I haven't had enough coffee today. His lovely partner in crime, Cindy, have really been able to systemize the Founders Connect podcast. So welcome, Anf.
Glad to be here, Crystal.
So I'm actually really excited to have this chat with you because I don't currently have a podcast in place, and it's something that I've been putting off purely because I had no idea how to start, which is generally what happens when you don't have a system in place. But once you start and you put the system in place, it is effortless and seamless. So I hopefully will be able to get a lot of tips for myself, being really selfishly, but also for anyone that jumps on the live and is able to watch the video after the fact. So I can't wait to hear what you have to tell us.
Okay, cool. I'll see what I can pack into half an hour because it's taken us a couple of years to get it to where it is right now, of course. But what I'll share is I'll walk you through essentially what the system looks like now. Okay, and the way to do that is probably if I screen share. Let me do this.
I love that we're getting a sneak peek into your screen share.
Whoa, that's crazy. So
wow.
Okay, so we're going to not look at that. We're going to look at this. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
All right. So essentially, there are really 7 steps to a podcast process, and I'll walk you through what they are. And this is, excuse me, a PDF that I put together when I first started podcasting, and I started doing this as a service for some clients as well. And what we had is essentially you want to start off with basically confirming, okay, let's assume that you're doing interviews with guests, which is typically the format that I'm using. If you're not doing that, then it doesn't really matter because you're not going to just ignore anything to do with guests. Yeah. But you will still confirm your own recording time. So you might schedule, for example, something that we got into the habit of doing was we started off doing like one a week, and then we got to a point where we were doing batches. So we would go, okay, let's do 4 episodes in one half day, and we'd record those all in one go, and then we would then put it through the system and have them be released or dripped out on a weekly basis. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's a good way to do it, so that you're chunking your time, which is one of the things we talk about in the summit.
Absolutely. Okay, so essentially we start off by confirming a time with the guest. I recommend using a tool like Calendly. That's one we use, or we can use something like, there's a whole bunch of them. I've changed now to a tool called Book Like a Boss, but it basically allows people to schedule time in with you. You don't play calendar tag, which is a big time saver you don't do email tag, right? That's a huge time saver. Then we record the audio. So what I'll do is I'll just share some of the tools that we're using, because some people like you might be thinking, well, what do I use to do that step, right? So when we record the audio, we basically, an easy way to do it is to use a tool like Skype or Zoom. I think Zoom is when this was written, we were using Skype, but now Zoom's kind of dominating the market in that area.
It definitely has come well and truly forward ahead of Skype.
Yeah, and so Zoom is fine. That works. What I like about Zoom, it records both video and audio at the same time, and it's free. There's certain limitations on that, but it does work. So once you've got that, then we basically record the audio. We throw the audio or upload the audio into Dropbox, or you can use Google Drive. That works too. And then you then want to edit the audio. Okay, now when I started, I was editing the audio myself. But that is a really long, boring process. And if you don't love audio editing, don't do it. You can try it. If you want to do it to try and save yourself some bucks, sure, right? But I would actually put to you that exactly right. It can really be annoying. So what I recommend here is you can go into Fiverr. You can find an audio editor very easily, and you basically pay them whatever it is to. You share the audio file with them, they pick it up, they do the editing, and they drop the edited file back into your Dropbox, into your Google Drive for you. and away
Did
you
you
go.
find some good quality Fiverr people?
Yes. Yeah, pretty easily. I'm working with my second editor now. The first editor we worked with for about a year, and then he kind of decided he was going to move on from doing audio editing. And then we got a new guy, and he's he's awesome. They're not hard to find. Just go on there and just do a search. My recommendation would be to look at the reviews that people are putting on to their profiles, and if you're seeing like 50 plus positive reviews, then that's a good sign, right?
Good tip.
Yeah. Now there are also, I mean, that's kind of the DIY option. You could also go to established agencies that do podcast editing, but typically you'll find their rates are 3 to 4 times higher. It just depends on, again, your budget and what you want to do. Okay. So once you've edited audio, we're going to tag and upload the audio file into essentially get it onto an audio server. Okay, the same way that if you're doing a blog post, you would go to WordPress if that's what you're using. You would then upload it, put the post there and do some editing. With podcasts, you need to host the file on an audio host. So common ones here that I've listed here is Libsyn, the SoundCloud. The one I'm using at the moment is called Whooshka. And it's free, which is why I like it. And it's an Australian-based company, and they're just doing a tremendous job with podcasts right now. Okay, so and I can share that link with you later on. But what you want to do is a couple of things here. So when we're putting the usually, and I'll show you this in a moment, but when we give the audio file to the editor, we're also giving them some instructions, right? Like in terms of the title of the podcast, the description of the podcast, that information needs to be added to the file during editing. So when it gets uploaded to your podcast host, and then it goes to iTunes, or it's called Apple Podcasts now, and to some of these other servers like Spotify. Basically what they're doing is they're taking the information that's embedded in that audio file, and then they use that for their own search engines. Okay, so this is why it's important that you give that information to your podcast
person. Embedded in the back end of that.
Yeah. All right, and I'll show you how we're doing that. The other part here, I've got a note here saying Canva for graphics, because when you get the podcast back, you actually, once you have the file, yes, you do put it onto an audio server, but then you also now have to put it onto your website. Okay, so let me just do a quick example. Yeah, so let me give you an example. But also, you need to sit on your site, because that's where you're going to drive traffic to. You're going to get people to go to your site like this, right? So this is sitting on our WordPress backend, and you can see this is the audio file that's been embedded. That audio file is sitting on iTunes, it's sitting on Spotify, Stitcher, right? And so we're just taking that embed code and we're putting it into the website. Now, again, it's good for you to know the process, but you can literally get a VA to do this for you, right? And so this is how sort of the page looks like, okay? And this is a good place. You have a show notes page like this because this is where you can actually embed links to the guests, their website, to any resources that I mentioned in the episode. Here's a bit of a call to action, right? Stuff like that. This can only happen on your website. You can't put this into, you can put it in your description into iTunes, but most people aren't reading those descriptions and clicking on them, especially if they're listening to the podcast on their phone or something.
It's going to be too much information as well.
Yeah, totally. Right. So then you create your show notes, just what I just showed you. You put it onto your WordPress. We're using self-hosted WordPress. Other people are using all kinds of tools, Wix, whatever is out there. Like it's choose your platform. I recommend WordPress just because I'm a long-time user of it, and it's just that's the way. For SEO, it's got good ratings and all that kind of good stuff as well. Yeah. Okay. Then you hit publish. Right, and then basically, or you can schedule it ahead of time. Like I mentioned before, we do it in batches. So we basically get all episodes edited. We upload them all in a batch, and we just schedule them to go out on specific dates. Right, okay. And the same thing when it hits on the WordPress site, we get our VA to schedule it out on a. Actually, right now Cindy's doing, but we basically schedule it out in advance. Okay. Yeah. And then the last thing is, and this is the most important part of the whole process, believe it or not, is actually to promote the podcast. So once it's published, you can't just expect all of a sudden magic's going to happen and people are going to start listening to it, right? Like
Why
you
not?
actually.
Don't understand.
No, yeah, right. So you want to do something like what you might have seen already that I've been doing as part of this summit launch is to. So we go to.
So while you're finding that, how far in advance should you be trying to promote your podcast? A week, 2 weeks, a month?
Excuse me. So basically, we promote it the day that it goes up when it's published, and then we basically do a repetition of that promotion. So we do 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, and then 30 days.
Okay.
Right?
And you're just doing the same post, or are those posts that are like a paid advertising post?
Right now, we're not boosting through paid advertising. We will be doing that start of next year. Okay, and that's a good point you raised there as well. To get, if you want to attract a new audience, using Facebook ads or something like that to really boost the post is a good idea. Okay, and you want to allocate a budget to that. You might do like $5 a day or something like that. And there's a really good strategy that I can share with you later on. It's called the $1 a day strategy by Dennis Yu. And essentially, you spend $30 a month, and you can really grow your podcast audience.
But essentially, currently, right now, you're not doing any paid advertising. It's all organic, and you're doing 1, 3, 5, and did you say 7?
7 and 30. 1, 3, 7, and 30.
Okay. And is it exactly the same post every single time, or do you change up the wording?
We tweak the wording a little bit, and we've got a little secret tool that I'll share with you that we use for doing that.
Look at all these tips that we're getting.
All right, so that's pretty much the entire process. Again, I'll share this with anyone who's watching this and you want it. I basically put this into a nice package for you so you can grab it at the end of this video, or this Facebook Live. Okay, now let me show you the behind the scenes part of it, which might scare a few people. All right, so we start the process off before we even jump into these 7 steps. We let's go back a step. We actually plan out what is the series of the next 10 or whatever episodes first, right? So we sit down and go, okay, for November, right? This is season 4. How many episodes are we going to do, right? And so we kind of planned for the summit. We were going to have 25 guests, so we knew we were going to have 25 episodes, right? And this is much more of an aggressive timeline. Usually we do it 10 episodes a season. So you think about 10 episodes, that's 10 weeks already. If we're rolling them on a weekly basis, but for this summit launch, we're rolling them on a daily basis. Okay, so we plan it out. We have our recording date. We've got our publishing date. Who the guest might be, the theme, right? We've got another page which I'll show you in a moment. Keywords. So this is important when you're doing podcasts. Something you want to think about is what are the keywords that people might be searching for related to that particular episode. Where if they were searching in Google or whatever the search engine is, if they type that keyword in, then your podcast should show up on that page, right? So there's a bit of work in the background to think about this in terms of if you're doing it for your business.
And they're the keywords that go into your website with that page? Correct.
So when you load in WordPress, you can basically add the keyword. The keyword needs to go into the title of the podcast episode. The other way the keyword works is when you put the episode audio into your podcast host or up to iTunes. Those keywords are what people are searching for as well, right? Yeah, okay. So if you're searching for, someone goes into the podcast app and they're going, I'm going to search for, how to systemize my business, right? And that happens to be the name of your podcast. That's going to come up, right? And that's how people discover you. Okay, so one thing we're doing, because we're focusing on our guests for this summit, we're basically using their names as the keywords because that just makes sense, right? And then we can go, okay, keywords, the title. Now, all this information, I'll just click to the next page. I think it's, here. Okay, so here's actually the detail that we provide to our audio editor, right? So we give them, I'll get away from all the greens because that's ugly, but excuse me for scrolling like crazy. Okay, so here, this is the next episode that's going to come out. Title is here, the name of the guest, a bit of a blurb, right? And then in there, tip for you is you can also put links in there. All right, so you can put links in there, and when people load it up on iTunes, to give you an example, the links will appear and people can click on them if they're viewing them on their desktop device, right?
Okay.
If you're viewing on your in your app on your phone, you can still see the links, but you notice that iTunes does make it so that you can't click on them.
Yeah.
Right. But the only thing that you can do through iTunes is define a primary website, like here, and people can click on that, and that takes them back to your website.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Still with me?
Yeah, I'm excited. This part is the bit that I get excited about.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. So then,
yes.
Yeah, and so then we move on to how do you go from here, where it's like this is more of a planning spreadsheet, and I'm going to share this as well. Then how do you go from here to then putting that into a project management system or a tool? So we've got a podcast production template in the tool. We're using a tool called ClickUp, which is similar to Asana or Trello.
It's like ClickUp, and it's like Asana and Trello on steroids is what ClickUp is.
Yes. So for most people starting out, I'd probably suggest just start with Trello. Yes. Like really simple. That's how we started for like 6 months before we decided to go crazy.
So you need to wrap your head around how does a project management system actually work. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what you'll notice here, so here are the steps which kind of translate to what those 7 steps were at the beginning. Remember we showed those to you on the PDF? Yeah, we'll tweak a little bit here because we've got promote on social media, create artwork, but essentially they're the same things. And then for a record episode, we go into there. We've got a series of questions that we actually ask the guest, and that's all here. So when we're recording, we actually bring this up and we just ask the questions that are here, tick them off, right?
That's smart. So, you're doing your system as you go.
Yeah, and that's the way you go, right? So that's the sort of the production side of it. And then we go, you've seen the spreadsheet we give to the audio editor, and then audio comes back, we upload it to the host, and then we go into the promotion part. Okay, so here's one of the important things you need to do, especially if you're interviewing guests. You want to have basically a templated email that you send out to your guests to let them know that the episode's live, right? So we basically have this set up as a, what's it called in Google? It's called a canned response. There you go, perfect. Excuse me. We just copy and paste, tweak a little bit, and then away we go. That's sent off. Now, with promoting, I wonder if I have it in here, because it's been updated. But yeah, there are a few things you can do with promotion. We definitely recommend you do your social media channels. We also recommend that you do it, you send it to your email list. That's an important one. Some people forget that that's really a great place to promote a podcast. And you want to make sure that goes out to your list, because there are people who actually obviously like and follow you. And so don't miss that one. We also send it to the guest. Now, here's the secret sauce that I mentioned. We're using a tool called Missing Letter. Have you seen this before?
No, I haven't.
So,
Missing Letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's actually Missing Letter.
Free software?
It's not free software. You have to pay for this one. Okay. But it basically will save you a gazillion hours in like social media promotion.
Okay.
So if we go to Founders Connect, what it does is when the episode goes live onto your WordPress site or whatever site you're running, it basically automatically pulls it into this tool and says, hey, this is ready to be promoted, okay? And then it basically says, okay, let's click on review. I'm going to review Green's episode, which is episode 34. I can then assign a number of hashtags. I sort of recommend you only do 3 max. Because if you do too many, it gets out of control. But you want to go, okay, this particular podcast is all about entrepreneurship. It's about LinkedIn. That's what Green's the expert about. And also this is related to the Remote Business Summit. All right, so that's the hashtags. I go next. Now, this is where the magic happens, and you're going to be blown away by this piece. Essentially, what Missing Letter does, it then generates 12 months of social media posts for you, right?
What? No. We're having
yeah, you can pick which social channels you want it to go to. So we've got our LinkedIn profiles, our Facebook. It doesn't do Instagram, it does Twitter. And then you can even use quotes. It pulls quotes from your show notes, right?
Wow.
So if you've got a transcript, for example, it will pull those comments and you can just pick relevant quotes in here. And then you're good to go, you approve it, and it just schedules it out for you. So if you notice, it does day 0, day 3, day 7.
And you can set those days and how often you want them to be sent, obviously.
Correct. So you can modify all that. It does give you analytics, and it tells you how your content's performing, all that good stuff. All right. So Missing Letter, and I'll share a link to that later on. But this is my magic.
Yeah, I can see why the value would be worth it, because the time spent in scheduling posts and thinking about the wording that you're going to use and all of that sort of stuff for 12 months worth, that's insane.
Yep. So I want to wrap it up. I mean, we'll go to question Q&A in a moment, but I have put together these resources for anyone who's watching this and going, yep, I want the template and I want the PDF, and I'll also give you a link to a free trial of Missing Letter as well. So basically just go to this, let me stop sharing. Well, you can go to this site, foundersconnect.co/podcast gift, and you can grab it all there. Okay,
cool.
So let's just stop sharing. I'm going to flick back to where is my StreamYard. Hello. So here we are.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm going to throw it over to you for questions, because I know you might have a ton of stuff coming up there.
I do.
Right?
I do. So I guess from a systems point of view, how hard or easy was it for you to actually put a system in place for the podcast?
So I wouldn't say it's easy, but now that I know it, we pretty much implemented a similar system inside of the Ninjas. We've done it. I've done it with other clients, right? So it just takes time to sit down and map out. And you could really, I reckon you could do it in half a day. If you sat down and just worked out what are the steps, you could, I'm giving you the steps anyway. You can go grab that and just go, here's 7 steps. What tool am I using? Where am I going to put that? And then going, okay, what's the frequency of the publishing that you want to do? Because you might want to do 1 a week, you might do 1 a month, you might do daily and go really hardcore. I'd recommend if you're starting up, don't do daily, because you'll burn out and die.
It's like trying to write a blog post every day.
You know it. So if you want to start off with, just try and go for maybe every 2 weeks. That's what we did with Bean Ninjas, actually. And then we went, okay, we can do a weekly now when the system's in place. And now we're looking at next year, we're going to go 2 times a week, right? So, and once you've got your editor in place,
Sorry, you keep going.
I was going to say, once you've got your tools and your editor and all those things in place, then you can really gauge how much or how less you want to go.
Yeah, and you can scale it quickly if you want to. So for example, with you guys doing the business summit, you want to be able to put on more regular podcasts, and because you've got the system in place, it allows you to easily and effortlessly do that.
100%. That's right. I mentioned, we went from, normally it's a weekly episode, but now for the summit, we're doing a daily episode. And it didn't require much tweaking to do that. Just basically letting our editor know and just saying, hey man, we need you to do batches of 10 rather than batches of 5. And he's like, no problems. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. And so earlier you mentioned that you've been doing podcasts for a couple of years. Can you tell us, in terms of implementing the system behind the podcast, how has that helped you to transform and grow not only the podcast but your business?
So there's 2 advantages of doing a podcast. One, it basically allows you it's a really good way to connect with people, right? People you want to get in front of, right? So whether they're peers in your industry, experts who are a level above you, and you're like, how can I like get into a conversation with these people, right? And it beats like doing a podcast and inviting someone onto your platform beats the hell of like knocking them on the door and going, "Can I pick your brain?" Like no one likes that, right?
Yeah.
But if you go, "Look, I want to feature you in front of my audience, right? And I want to put you on iTunes," then they go, "Hey, that's cool. I like that. Let's have a chat," right? And we've rarely had. I probably had over the past 3 years like 2 people turn me down, right?
Yeah, okay.
And as you start to build the downloads, and you can get stats on all your like monthly downloads and things like that. As your numbers grow, you can then go and do things like get sponsorships, right? The only issue with sponsorships is typically they're looking for tens of thousands of downloads a month, right? Companies like that. But you can go, if you're in a specific niche, like for example, what you're doing, Crystal, you could go, well, an ideal sponsor for my podcast might be the tool that I'm actually using for my systems, right? So you might go to them and go, my podcast is all about systems and systemization. I'm using your tool already. Would you be interested in sponsoring that? Because that's what I'm going to teach my audience. And they will go, that's actually a good partnership, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we did with the summit. So we went out to people and went, this is what the summit's about. Who's a couple of things. I'm going to feature on our podcast, and I'm also going to put you in the summit, right? So everyone went, I like that. Let's go ahead, right? So that's number one. Number two is the number of people listening to podcasts is like astronomically rising. Okay, much more than anything else right now. I know everyone's like, oh, videos are the hot rage right now, but tell you what, podcast is you're literally in someone's ear for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour at a time, right? And when someone's working out or they're driving the car somewhere or they're cleaning the house and they're listening to you, it's almost like you're sitting in a room having coffee with them for half an hour, right? And so there's a level of trust that's built that's a lot more deeper than your blog post or even your video sometimes, right? So that's something to keep in mind.
Great. Well, I mean, we're coming up to the 30-minute mark. So that's all the questions that I have. I want to thank you so much for sharing that and obviously providing that podcast gift, because I know that we'll be putting that into place over the next 6 months. And hopefully anyone else that's been watching and listening will be able to do that as well.
You're welcome. And I want everyone to know that you're going to be on the Remote Business Summit. So you want to grab Crystal sharing. And what are you talking about on the summit?
I am talking about how to implement a system around your time management and goals so that you can start doing the things that you love doing.
Amazing. I can't wait for that one. And that's also free tickets. If anyone's interested, here's the URL, go grab it. And we definitely want to see you supporting Crystal on there as well, because her talk is amazing. All right, Crystal, thank you so much for having me on today.
Thanks, Am. Have a good day.
Thanks.